Now pay attention, 007, and everyone else out there. It's Missing Real with Mike Darrigo, or Mike D, and he's licensed to ill. There's a lawsuit in there somewhere. Intuitive improvisation is the secret of genius. Oh, could you be talking about my podcasting skills? Nah, that's nothing more than just another cheap Bond villain monologue, although delivered by Christopher Walken, so that must give it a little bit more heft. Yes. Well, thanks all for coming back again for yet another one of my episodes of Missing Real Podcast. This one, I dare say, is a carefully chosen James Bond film, and you might wonder what care I actually put into it because I picked one of the worst ones, but it's one of the most fascinating. So I really want to talk about 1985's A View to a Kill, which is Roger Moore's swan song as James Bond. And yeah, it was a bit long in the tooth, as many have said, to be doing this movie at age 57. But to Sean Connery's credit, when he bowed out as Bond, he was 52. But hey, you know what? I'm glad this movie exists, if only to make fun of, but it was a lot of fun at the time. And of course, I've seen every Bond movie to date. And when I was at the age I was, when View to a Kill came out, I'd probably seen, all the Roger Moore stuff. I think the first time I saw a Bond film in a theater might have been Moonraker. Because before that, we'd just catch, Goldfinger on TV or whatever and see whatever Bonds I could. And I love Sean Connery. I mean, he's the original Bond, and Roger Moore just lent a bit more English gentleman to the proceedings. He was very, very debonair and dapper, and a little more humor in his delivery, and his eyes widening and rolling at things and leering, and the looks he has on his face are priceless. Sean Connery's a little bit more stoic and no nonsense and more just cold killer, but Roger Moore lightened things up. He Brited it up a little bit, but I loved it. And, even though this is not his finest movie as Bond, I think Roger Moore's best outing was probably The Spy Who Loved Me, because that one was just chock full of action and imagination and great characters and cool locations and a whole lot of fun. I like that one the most probably. But this one came along at a time when Roger Moore was getting old, but the studio, MGM, was hoping to get a younger audience. Hence the theme song performed by Duran Duran, and we'll get into that later, because Duran Duran was really riding high in the mid-80s, and they were about to, kind of hit their peak at that point. But yet they're still going strong today, with at least, 4 original members, I think. Yeah, not bad, right? So, all right, View to a Kill. Let's just talk about some technical crap before we get into the really crappy crap about it. View to a Kill is directed by a Bond veteran, John Glenn, not the guy who went to space, not that rocket man dude, not the astronaut. This other guy. He stayed on Earth most of the time and made James Bond movies. He directed For Your Eyes Only and Octopussy, and he also directed some later films, the Dalton ones. He was involved with Living Daylights and License to Kill, and he also did some editing on even other Bond movies, so he should know his stuff. He should know his MI6 backwards and forwards, right? But then he also directed, an Aha video for Living Daylights, and the 1992 Iron Eagle 3 Aces, which I don't think would pose much of a threat to any of the Bond films, not even View to a Kill. Of course, View to a Kill is starring Roger Moore, the one and only Roger Moore, Sir late Roger Moore or something, but God bless. He was amazing on screen, and, his roles in The Saint back in the 60s were great. He started off as Bond in 1973's Live and Let Die, where he was mostly in, some really rough neighborhoods in, urban settings in New York City. Not very worldly or globe-trotting and jet-setting like he usually is, but that was still a pretty decent movie. And View to a Kill was his 7th and final appearance as James Bond, again, at age 57. But after this, he still appeared in a couple of movies, although nothing spectacular. 1996's The Quest with Jean-Claude Van Damme, and 1997's Spice World, which I guess he could, fit in nicely. I think he was the bad guy in that, and all of the Bond villains he faced over the years must have helped him cobble together quite a crafty performance, which won absolutely 0 accolades. So, all right. But I think I watched it once. I don't know. Can't remember. But, we've been without Roger Moore since 2017. the time of his death in Switzerland at age 89. But what a legacy he's left. And I mean, I love all his movies. He was in Wild Geese, Bullseye with Michael Caine, I think. It was some great shit. Very fun stuff. So, all right, that's enough about Sir Roger Moore. We'll talk about him more later. And of course, there has to be the token Bond girl in the movie, or a couple of Bond girls, one who lives, one who dies, one who's kind of good, one who's like shifty. So we got that. We got Tanya Roberts playing Stacey Sutton in this movie. Tanya Roberts is not really Tanya Roberts. She was born Victoria Lee Bloom, which is a nice name, but so is Tanya Roberts. And Tanya Roberts was Charlie's Angels' final seasons in the 70s. And then she went on to these epic films like The Beastmaster in 1982. Excellent in that. And of course, 1984, she was Sheena. Pretty good movie too, although it was really just a showcase to check out her walking around in a rag. But she was very, cool in that. And it didn't matter what kind of acting she did because she's from the jungle. You can't compare her to Helen Mirren or anybody. And she's some jungle chick, and she knows her way around the vines. And you better just listen to her and do what she says, man. She's Sheena. I guess if they wanted to get more, politically correct and woke and do like a male version of that, no, it wouldn't be Tarzan. I guess it would be Hina. Okay, you could scratch that or gong it for me. I don't really care. And Tanya Roberts was also on that 70s show in that 90s decade. And she died in 2021 too. It's so sad. Age 71. Gosh, man. But at least maybe her and Roger Moore are working on the sequel to View to a Kill up there in heaven right now. Or perhaps in hell. Who knows? But I'd watch it. Yes, I would. And before we get into the actual movie itself, let me just talk about one more person who's in it. Because he deserves his own podcast, really. The one and only Christopher Walken. Yes, Ronnie Walken, that's his real name, grew up in a dance theater background and, just picked up the name Chris or Christopher from someone who thought it sounded better. And yeah, from now on, he's Christopher Walken. And there is no other, because Christopher Walken, funny enough, starred in a movie with Sean Connery in 1971, The Anderson Tapes. He was very young in that movie. I think it was his first feature. And then he's been in over 100 films. I think I've seen just about all of them at this point, or I try to at every opportunity because he's just, so damn watchable. He's the weirdest, most eccentric actor, and the line deliveries he gives. Now, I mean, if you know who he is, there's no point in me babbling on about it because you know everything about Christopher Walken that needs to be known, and the way he talks and chops up his sentences. And the times he hosts Saturday Night Live and steals the show. He's just the Continental, everything he does, man. It's great. And my favorite stuff with him is just, there's so many damn things, I mean, I don't want to say everything, but he's great in so much shit. Like, The Deer Hunter won him an Oscar in 78, but I think he's been better than that every other time I've seen him in my favorites, like The Dead Zone, 1983, King of New York in 90. He stole the movie in Batman Returns as Max Schreck. True Romance, one scene, bam, he takes the whole movie with him. Pulp Fiction, Balls of Fury, I could go on and on. Some interesting Walken stuff too. He got a MTV Video Music Award for his self-choreographed dance routine in a Fatboy Slim video, because Walken can dance, and he tries to work a dance move into almost every performance in every movie he ever does. Even if he just opens a door and steps aside, he'll sort of swish, or he'll tap dance around something. It's just, he likes to dance, let's just say, and he's good at it. And he can sing a little bit, too. I saw him in 2000 in a production of James Joyce's The Dead, where he was just standing there on stage and doing a lot of walking, talking, and he sang a very morose kind of song at the end, and it was, kind of put me to sleep, but I loved anything he would appear in. To see him on stage live was worth going. It was good. So yeah. He's Christopher Walken. When I saw View to a Kill the first time, I really had no idea who he was. I'd only seen maybe The Deer Hunter at that point, and I was very young, so I don't think it had any kind of impact on me. And I saw The Dogs of War. I knew who he was. I saw Brainstorm, I think. And yeah, all right, he's just Christopher Walken. And his name is circled. It's like in a box, and Christopher Walken. He's like the extra star of this movie that you got to pay attention to. So, nowadays, okay, he was in View to a Kill. He was a Bond villain. Yeah, watch that. With his bleach blonde hair. Apparently, his image was based upon Sting and David Bowie, who I believe was also approached to play this character, Max Zorin. And Bowie declined because he had something more important to do, Labyrinth, which, of course, I cannot blame the guy for. I mean, Labyrinth is another absolute classic, although a little bit less violent than View to a Kill. And something interesting that Walken and Bowie have in common is heterochromia, where they have eyeballs of different colors, like a hazel and a blue, Bowie's eyes and Walken's eyes, they're different. So that's something interesting and cool and notable. But I would watch either one of them in almost any damn movie. And finally, just to say one more thing about Walken, what he could have done, what he would have done would have been great if he had actually been cast as the villain in Cliffhanger, the Stallone movie, but John Lithgow took that role and did really great with it. But of course, Walken versus Stallone, come on, man, how could you not watch that? That would be incredible. So, all right, let's talk about A View to a Kill, because that's the movie here, and I'm not just here to talk about actors. Move my notes, because I have notes here. Following along. So here, our film opens with the usual Bond, the barrel of the gun, and shooting at you, and the blood coming down, and the thing shakes back and forth. Okay, yeah. So now we're in Siberia, in the snow, and before we even see Siberia, we have a disclaimer on the screen. It goes, the name Zoran is not intended to represent an actual person or company, yada yada, because there was apparently some company called Zoran, which is Hebrew for silicon, that makes silicon microchips and things that help DVD players work. So of course, if we all need DVD players and to watch View to a Kill later on, we don't want to offend the company that made the technology that makes it possible to watch DVDs now, do we? So Zoran is not offended by this movie, I hope, by Christopher Walken's psychotic performance as Zoran. Or I just could have changed his name to Zoran. I don't know, but all right. So the movie opens in Siberia. There's some snow, and there's Bond snooping around and finding some other agent, killed underneath the snow. And of course, there's hostiles in the neighborhood, and they're all Russians, and they start shooting at him, and then this interesting John Barry music pops up, which is really great and very rousing, exciting, until it morphs into a really shit cover of the Beach Boys' California Girls, just because Bond is surfing on one of the skids from a snowmobile. Okay, yeah, we have to do that, right? Let's make it cheeky. The Midwest fun. No, fuck that, man. Get back to the John Barry, which they do, but only after you've grown and watched some really bad surfing stunts by other people who are not Roger Moore. And he finally ends up, after blowing up their helicopter, he finds this little iceberg lounge floating around. Of course, there's a lovely female inside waiting for him with the Bollinger and a lounge and everything, and then they have to make their way back to headquarters. But of course, it's like a 5-day trip, so they'll be boinking along the whole time. And then, the Duran Duran song comes on. View to a Kill, composed by Duran Duran and John Barry. Somehow this song came about because John Taylor of Duran Duran ran into the producer, Albert Broccoli, at some party, and he was somewhat drunk, and asked him, hey, when are you going to finally get someone decent to do one of your songs? And of course they got somebody decent. This Duran Duran song was the only #1 in the US of any James Bond theme to date. So I don't know if now maybe one of the other ones might have trumped it, I'm not sure, but Chris Cornell possibly, or Adele, but back then Duran Duran, they struck gold with this fucking song. It's a really good, catchy song, and it plays through the entire opening credits, the Maurice Binder opening credit sequence, which is always very artsy, but this one goes on for a bit long, and you hear the whole song, and you see all the credits and stuff. It's kind of like they make these beginning credits really long, so at the end you don't have to sit through 15 minutes of credits and gaffers and Best Boys and Marvel pop-up secret post-credit shit. They never had any of that stuff back then. They got movies over with. When it was over, it's just, it's over and you leave the theater. The credits will have already finished by the time you walk up to the exit. So, unless you want to stick around and see who played everybody in this movie. But don't worry, I will tell you, in case you never actually intend to sit through this movie. But it's really not as bad as people will have you think. And it's still, you got to be complete. You got to watch every Bond movie. If you've seen a couple of Bond movies, you got to watch all the Bond movies. They evolve over time. And this is a bit of a time capsule of the 80s. And it was kind of tacky, kind of cheesy. Not the greatest Bond. But again, lots to enjoy. Okay, so here's our Duran Duran sequence. All right, we always have to end up at MI6 headquarters, and you got Q and M and all the other letters of the alphabet there briefing Bond on stuff. And Q is rolling around this little remote control dog, and this little beeping crap that looks like you give it to a 6-year-old under the Christmas tree. It's such a piece of crap. I don't know, maybe its head extends up and down. I don't know. It's like a remote control R2-D2 beats this thing by miles. So anyway, this is Q's latest device, which Bond doesn't even really pay much attention to, because they have more important business. Going off to the horse races, yeah. They're investigating this Zoran guy who's walking with his bleach blonde hair, and they go to the horse races, and they meet up with Sir Godfrey Tibbett, who's played by Patrick Macnee, famous for the Avengers back in the 60s. And, of course, he was the voice of the Imperious leader on Battlestar Galactica, the old Battlestar Galactica, and he was also Count Iblis in some really good episodes of that. Other notable roles? He was Sir Dennis Eaton Hogg in Spinal Tap. And he played a chauffeur in an Oasis video in 1996. I'm not sure if he had to drive the two Gallagher brothers in the same car, because that would have been a very violent video, I'm sure. So also hanging out in this movie, appearing here in all of the really wild fashions of the 80s, is Grace Jones, a model, musician, had some albums out. I don't have any of them. You'd seen her probably in Conan the Destroyer in 1984. She has some Duran Duran ties because she was a voice in an Arcadia song. You know, Arcadia was a Duran Duran spinoff, for those of you who don't know everything about Duran Duran like I do. She was in a movie Vamp in 1986, popped up in Boomerang in 92, and the TV Beastmaster in 1999, and that was probably the last any of us geeks might have seen of her. She's in this movie. She plays Mayday. She's the sort of henchwench, or, you know, whatever, part of the muscle for Zoran, literally, because she's like stronger than everybody else. And she could lift things up, and probably does a lot of steroids, and wears this really, really red cape. And she's trying to calm down this really excitable horse after the race. It's a good thing it's not a bullfight, because that would probably be the end of Mayday's character in this movie. But she lasts a bit longer. And she's holding onto this horse there. They think that Zoran is using steroids to help his horses win the race. Now, this is really a diabolical Bond plot, if I ever heard one. But don't worry, there's a lot more going on. It's not just, horse races and fixing the race. Now, come on, how low have we sunk? If this is all Bond can go after. Roger Moore is getting kind of old. Okay, we're going to send you to the races. You just make sure none of the bookies are playing any funny business over there. All right, well, we'll leave all the guns and espionage to the younger folks, the next generation of double O's. So after this amazing horse race scene, we go to Paris, and we're at the Eiffel Tower, and Bond is having dinner with this aubergine guy. I don't know, there's some French guy. I think they even had to dub his dialogue, because he was just too French to even speak English with a French accent. So he's and Roger Moore's like, just nodding and nodding. But eventually, this guy gets killed by this flittering butterfly, which is actually a poison dart. There's a performance going on with butterflies fluttering around. They're all fake butterflies, but this butterfly has got a poison dart and gets the guy in the face. And Roger Moore gets to utter one of his, "There's a fly in his soup." Then he runs off to catch this assassin. So if you get killed with a butterfly, I guess the Paris police are going to have a lot to work with here, right? Yeah, let's narrow down the suspects to anyone with a jar. All right, so Bond is chasing this assassin, this black-clad ninja-looking assassin, but very, very well-tailored ninja suit. Fits all the contours of the body and the thin waistline and everything else. It's really Mayday. We know that's Grace Jones. Going up the Eiffel Tower steps, Bond is trying to catch her. He's running up the stairs, shooting at her, missing every shot. Bumps into every member of Duran Duran on the way up as they're shooting their fucking music video. Nick Rhodes is taking pictures. "Hey, you look great. Turn around." "No, not me." He tries to catch her. She jumps off and she's like she's having an orgasm in midair, flies off the Eiffel Tower, gets a parachute out, and he's trying to chase her down in a car, which soon becomes half a car, and a lot of stunt drivers and stunt men. I'm telling you, there are like many, many, many stunt men and wigs and things in this movie that are not Roger Moore. And about this, I mean, you would think, you're James Bond, you want to get in on the action, right? But Roger Moore has said in interviews that these stunt people enjoy the adrenaline rush of these action sequences, and goes, "I don't like that rush." I guess you don't like that rush. You just like to drink the martinis and sleep with the chicks, right? Yeah, okay. So his stuntmen chase Mayday. She gets into a boat with Walken. He goes, "So?" She goes, "Ha ha ha ha." And that pretty much says it all, wrapping up their assassination thing. Okay, so this horsing around continues, okay, because now there's a horse sale, and Bond has to go undercover to try to see what's going on with the horses and snoop around and pretend he's going to buy this Ithacus colt, which is like several $1 million probably at auction. This is something you don't just trot onto Sotheby's stage. This is like some serious spending. And I'm not going to use all of England's banks to pay for it, I'm sure. But he goes there anyway, I guess. He has his Bond credit card. He'll see what he can do. But he's not Bond. He has an alter ego. They open the door for him, and one of the ladies there is like, "Mr. St. John Smith." St. John Smythe, my dear. So he's James St. John Smythe. Just remember that, because he's going to be there for a while. All right, so then he gets greeted at the steps of this really huge mansion by Alison Doody, this young actress, Irish, who was only 19 when she auditioned for View to a Kill. "I'm Jenny Flex." "Of course you are." Of course she is. Okay, but you know who else she is besides Jenny Flex? She was Elsa in Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade in 1989, so she worked with Sean Connery, another Bond, yes. And she became the spokesmodel for L'Oreal for a little while, because she's pretty. And she talks in her sleep. Don't forget that. There's this Asian girl, Papillon Susu, playing Pan Ho. Doesn't do a whole hell of a lot except meet James St. John Smith. But she also, in 87, played a hooker in Full Metal Jacket. And in 1992, she played a waitress in the Rutger Hauer movie Split Second, which is probably about the length of her screen time. So you play a Bond girl, a hooker, and a waitress, which is great if it's in reverse order. So, all right, so much for her career in a capsule, but okay, she's there. We got representation. We got everybody in here. It's like Star Trek. It's like the UN of Bond henchmen, hench people, hench individuals, however they want to identify now. I hope that was woke enough for everybody. I don't know. I'm sorry. It was 1985. Leave me alone. This was the casting. So, all right. So here Bond checks in with Tibbett there. And even though they're really equals, or Tibbett is actually probably even higher ranking than Bond, Bond just treats Tibbett as his valet and just has him schlep everything around with him. And he insults him and belittles him in front of everyone. Hey, you haven't shined my shoes like this. Look at the state of my clothes. Just being very English and stuffy. And they put a tape on so people think that they're still bantering, but they really go around and talk about the plot, figuring out the horses. And this is another hench person, Scarpeen. It's just some dude with a scar on his peen, I think. And he's played by Patrick Bachau or something. And I don't know what else he's in, and not that important, so I'm going to skip him. Sorry, Scarpeen. He doesn't live to the end of the movie anyway. So then there's a horse that vanishes out of one of the stables, and Tibbett is snooping around. He's wondering what the hell's going on. Where'd the horse go? And then Bond and Mayday have a quick little encounter where she spots him in the hallway. She glimpses him. I know I've seen him somewhere before. And then Grace Jones didn't get along very well with Roger Moore, I think because she, A, wanted to stay in character, or B, didn't dig Roger Moore's pro-apartheid views or something like that. But again, we don't want to get political. This is Missing Real. We're just goofing off and telling jokes and trivia and shit. But God, how could he? Anyways, yeah, so she thinks she knows who this guy, St. John Smith, is. And of course, Zorin is no idiot because he's played by Christopher Walken. And while Bond is snooping around and he sees Tanya Roberts land in a helicopter and, Zorin writes her a check. He's like spying, like a $5 million check. Like, oh, we would think they would pay you a little bit more to be in a Bond movie. But anyways, so somebody spots Roger Moore snooping around like, you were looking for something? I was looking for the bar. So at this point, James Bond can't even find the bar. What use is he, man? All he does is drink and shoot and fuck. So he's useless at this point. Again, I will show you. I am Dr. Karl Motner. So this German guy, who's really British, is played by a British guy, Willoughby Gray, is Dr. Karl Motner. And he was modeled after Joseph Mengele, sort of, because he's like doing all these experiments and shit with human subjects. And he manages to create some sort of high IQ children who end up growing up being psychotic. And we think Zorin is one of those guys. I don't know what else Willoughby Gray has been in, except The Princess Bride. In 1987, he played the king. And it's good to be the king, isn't it? Okay, so now Bond is out at the bar and schmoozing with people and rubbing elbows, and Scarpeen comes along. Are you enjoying this, Mr. Smith? Immensely. St. John Smith, in case anyone forgot. And he's talking to Mortner and understanding, like, how can your horses win so many races when there are much better breeds competing against them? Okay, we don't care all this stodgy shit. No one cares about horses, gosh. But then he meets Zorin, finally. Mr. St. John Smith, allow me to introduce myself. And Christopher Walken. And they meet, and there's already like tension between them, because he's the bad guy, and bad guy knows Bond is not really who he says he is, and he finds out later, of course, who exactly he is. He goes like, so I take it you enjoy riding. I'm happiest in the saddle. Yeah, he's crazy, man. We love him. He's the best. But these aren't even the best lines. This is just what he's got. He just works with what he's got. You could just give him the alphabet, and he'll make it exciting for you. He's great, Walken. All right, so whatever he says, I just hang on his every word, even though the script is kind of crap here. Bond is insinuating that Zorin has something to do with the butterfly casting thing in the Eiffel Tower. And he makes this really weird insinuation, and Walken just looks at him and is like, I'm neglecting my other guests. So enjoy the young ladies. I'm sure you'll find them stimulating company. Indeed, I will. And he makes a beeline for Tanya Roberts. And he starts talking and goes, I thought you might like to join the party. My name's James. I'm English. Oh, it's James St. John Smith, by the way. She's like, I never would have guessed. And so Tanya Roberts is acting on all cylinders here. And I think she was nominated for a Razzie for her performance. She's mostly just a lot of breathless things, and she says, and she screams like, James, a lot too. But she's pretty good at that. I mean, you gotta give her credit. I loved her in Beastmaster. I mean, come on, I'm not knocking the chick. She's beautiful. I'm so sorry she's gone, but she's a Bond girl. You don't expect like, Harvard professor. Although, Denise Richards was Dr. Christmas Jones. Don't ever underestimate a babe, They're all intelligent. Especially in Bond movies, with names like that. Dr. Christmas Jones. All right, anyways, it's Tanya Roberts. At least Stacey Sutton is a nice subtle name, instead of like things that reference, genitalia and whatnot. Okay, so here we are. Bond and Stacey meet up. She's giving him like the cold shoulder. He's flirting, and Zoran sees her. Mayday, get her away from him. Your helicopter leaves in 20 minutes. Oh, are you leaving? I thought you might spend the evening together. And he starts flirting with Mayday also. Like, Bond will do anything, man. He's so horny in this movie. Forget it, man. He's just like, he just can't keep it in his pants, even though, he can barely find it anymore, probably. So now, Stacey goes away. Tibbet is still snooping around. They got this snoring tape on in the room while they go snooping around at night. And there's a fight because they meet the henchmen down in the basement. Of course, the fight has all these really bad sound effects like when they fight, and Patrick McNee, who's probably even older than Roger Moore, gets like 1 or 2 blows in and he gets his ass kicked. Bond gets these guys wrapped up in boxes on the conveyor belt. It's okay. It's corny. It's silly. It's not a great fight scene. But they find out that there's all these steroids and things in the lab, and Dr. Mortimer comes down and finds out this is in the wrong place. So Roger Moore was probably looking, for some like vitamins as Geritol. I don't know. So yeah, they know that somebody's been snooping around, and they get back, and another stuntman runs across the drawbridge and jumps up and hangs on and climbs over the thing before the drawbridge closes. I don't know why they have a drawbridge at these horse stables. It's very medieval, but I love it. It's cool. All right, so while they're getting back to their room, Zoran and Mayday are having a little sparring match, in the gym. It's kind of weird. It's kind of erotic. It's kind of creepy at the same time. Christopher Walken and Grace Jones, anything could happen. All right, so like she bests him, but then he rolls over and bests her and starts kissing her. She starts snarling like a beast. Like, I don't know who's scarier in this movie, right? All right, so anyways, the phone rings. I ordered no disturbance. Says, but, we found something going on in the lab. Get dressed. We have to find him. Gotta find Bond. Oh, I don't know he's Bond yet. All right, Grace Jones is wandering around. She's going to get changed into her irregular clothes. And she goes into her room, and guess who's there? 007 waiting in bed. Mayday, I've been waiting for you to take care of me personally. So she just goes in there, and Zoran's like, okay. Thinking she's going to assassinate him, but she does worse. She has sex with him. And it's kind of creepy, and she's probably completely naked, and there's like a little jump cut like when she moves the covers, so she probably just slips into bed and you see everything, or Roger Moore saw everything, and he was able to survive this at least. He still lasted him another couple decades. God bless the guy. All right, so he has sex with Mayday. The next morning, he goes into Walken's office. He walks into Walken's office. Yeah, I had to say that. And they talk about horses and like, I want to show you some horses, help you with your purchase later today. They're interested in that. So some like bullshit like yada yada. But Walken is taking pictures of Roger Moore on his very high-tech computer, which is like maybe like 8-bit graphics practically on really, really bad resolution. So every time Roger Moore turns his face, he takes another shot of it. He's pressing buttons on a very old keyboard, and he's finding out that this is not James St. John Smythe. It's really James Bond, licensed to kill. And you see Walken's, like his eyes pop up and he laughs and stuff. He does his shit. He's great. And Roger Moore doesn't really know what's going on, that he's being investigated by this really high-tech technology, which later on, after this movie, the CIA actually decided to develop because it didn't exist yet. I'm sure they did it so much better, like that very same year. But these Bond movies, when you look back, there's really no technology in them. It's like, that's so old, man. And now, like, they come with all this funky shit, like just transporting you into different dimensions and things. Like, nothing less will do at this point. Q really has a lot to live up to nowadays. They talk a little bit, and Zoran knows that Bond is Bond. He invites him to go horse riding outside and do a little steeplechase thing and whatever, and it actually turns out to be like a beatdown where all these other horse riders are trying to kick Bond's ass, and they have all these rising barriers that jump over, and the horses jump, and it's filmed so badly. It's just, everything's a close-up. You see Roger Moore looking backwards and Walken looking back with a blue screen or whatever behind them, rear projection. It's cheesy. It's crappy. He hits his little horse button, his little horse nitrous oxide turbo button thingy on his little cane, and Bond's horse goes crazy, jumps over the fence, runs into the woods, and they catch him. And earlier they had taken out Tibbet there because he goes to go wash the car and make a report to some other superior. And anyway, Grace Jones slipped into the back of the car and strangled his ass while they're getting the car washed. So Bond goes to the car thinking that Tibbet is driving it, but it's really Mayday. And he pulls over and sees him dead. Killing Tibbet was a mistake. I'm about to make the same mistake twice. But actually, the only mistake that Zoran makes is not just putting a bullet in Bond. No, he has to go with the old, clever, crafty, let's see how to get rid of my arch nemesis. Licensed to kill, British Secret Service. I guess we'll just knock him out and put him in the back of the car and push it into the lake. Courtesy of Grace Jones's superior strength. Pushes the car into the lake. It goes under. They're watching. Bond gets out, and he sucks air out of a tire to stay alive. And according to Mythbusters, this don't work. I don't know how many people tried and died to suck air out of a tire while underwater, but apparently James Bond can do it. So, he survives and, he gets out of there. We don't see the scene where he comes out dripping wet. We don't want to see his nice tuxedo all like soaked and dripping. No, we never see him looking like that. He's always got to be dapper. Like, by the next time you see him, he's dry and all coiffed and everything. And Roger Moore didn't look that terrible in this movie. He looks a little wrinkly. His eyes look a little bit he's always got his eyes wide open all the time. People have just criticized it so much, but he did a good job. He was still being the character. His hair was a little bit thinner and lighter and whatever, and every other scene was his stuntmen. But I'm still just, again, I'm grateful that Roger Moore did another Bond, even if it's as tacky and bad as this one. So we're going to talk about it some more. Sorry. I'm getting off plot. Who else? What else? Who else? Where? What? Okay, so now we have a scene with the KGB, General Gogol, Walter Gotell. He's in a lot of Bond movies, and Zorin is defecting as he has affiliations. General Gogol, this meeting is ill-advised. A little altercation, a little argument, and then all of a sudden people pull guns out, and then we see somebody whip a gun out and point it, and it's Dolph Lundgren. Yes, Ivan Drago himself. Dolph Lundgren was really just barely somebody at this point. He was just dating Grace Jones, or he was her bodyguard, like she needs a bodyguard. But that's Dolph Lundgren there real quick. And then I guess he goes back to the KGB and starts training for his match with Balboa. So this is talking about main strike. This is the big plot that Zorin has. Main strike. He has a meeting in a big meeting room, and he throws all these microchips on the table. One thing stands in our way. And he shows everybody this little miniature thing pops out of the table, and they're like, ooh, and ah. It's a little miniature. Silicon Valley. And once we get rid of Silicon Valley, we could own the entire microchip market or whatever like that. What do you propose? Project Main Strike, for which each of you will pay me $100 million. This is preposterous. I will not do this. Okay, fine. Okay, so the rest of our talk is confidential. Will you step outside? Yes, I'd be happy to. Mayday will provide you with a drink. And if that doesn't give you an inkling of what's about to happen, especially to this stupid schmuck guy that walks down to the stairway this way, and then the stairway turns into a ramp, and then the bottom of it opens up, and there's the sky, down the slide, trick stairs, out the bottom of a fucking blimp, into the Pacific Ocean. Like, when you got into the meeting room, did you happen to notice it was on a blimp? And that you were like probably a few thousand feet up in the sky? And then if you stepped out of the boardroom, well, there may not be anything to step out to. Schmuck. Anyways, okay, that's what happens. And of course, Walken's the best line right after this is, so, does anyone else want to drop out? Love that. It's the best. Ba-dum, boom, shh. Okay, so he's looking out the blimp window with Mayday. They're just looking at the Golden Gate Bridge and San Francisco and whatever. He goes like, what of you? To a kill. Like, who says that, really? Even Ian Fleming, man, when he wrote From a View to a Kill, some short story that this is based on in name only. Come on, man. Would you like the seat by the window? It's got a great view to a kill. Yeah, okay, let's go. It's got a great view to an intersection, a great view to a crosswalk. I just don't know where these fucking words come from. They're stupid. And, but at least, when you sing them, like Simon Le Bon, it sounds great. Okay, so Bond meets up with a CIA contact, Chuck Lee, who's played by David Yip. David Yip is a guy who also appeared in Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. He was Wuhan. And in 1999, he was a cop in Entrapment, another movie with Sean Connery. Like, a lot of people in this movie have worked with the other Bond, including this other dude. Let's just talk about him now so I don't forget, because he's not that important. He's like some redneck guy, Bob Conley. He works with Zorin. He's into oil. He's got oil pumping stations that Zorin is using for his sinister plot. So this guy's played by Manning Redwood. He sounds like a guy from the woods. And he was in Outland in 1981 and Never Say Never Again in 1983, both with, you guessed it, Sean Connery. So everybody loves working with Sean Connery, and then they just end up working with Roger Moore again. But it's great to work with two Bonds. Oh my God, it's great, man. The stories you could hear from them. It's great. Anyhow, so the plot, yeah. So there's this oil pumping station, which is Zorin's, of course, and they're talking about how it ruined the crab trade. He's in the San Francisco Bay talking to this fisherman. We can't catch any crabs anymore, except when we go to bed with the hookers. So there's this propeller thing, and some guy's going to get caught in a propeller. Someone's trying to set a bomb there. Like, there's this other agency trying to sabotage Zorin's operation or the oil thing. And they catch someone, they throw him down the propeller. It gets chopped up. It's not that gory. We don't see anything. There's a Russian spy, okay? The Russians are doing this too. I guess General Gogol doesn't trust him at all. Nobody ever leaves the KGB. And there are consequences. So Bond meets up with this woman, Paula Ivanova, and they're in a hot tub, and they're playing cassettes. And, the whole point of this is like, they knew each other. And some good trivia about this that I didn't know. It was so cool, and I wish it had actually come to pass. This Paula Ivanova chick was actually originally intended to be Anya Amasova, the Russian agent that he ran into in Spy Who Loved Me. But since Barbara Bach was just too busy being Ringo Starr's wife, she must have turned down this role for some reason. I don't know. I thought it would have been great to bring her back, and she probably would look a little bit better at that age than Roger Moore did. But that's who it is. It's Paula Ivanova, played by Fiona Fullerton. She's in other stuff too, but it's okay. They do the hot tub thing. He has sex with her too. Puts another checkbox on. To tell you the truth, man. He has a lot of sex in this movie for a guy, his 57 years old Secret Service, but it's good, man. It's good. Talk about that again later when we get the final count. Okay, so now he's got another identity. Now he's James Stock. So he goes to this environment, this Department of Conservation, right, where Stacy works. And, he's just snooping around. Like, he doesn't even know her really yet. He's still just a creepy stalker to her. So there's this guy, Mr. Howe, played by Daniel Benzali. He played a lot of cops, let's just say, to wrap things up pretty quickly. He was in some Star Trek Next Generation episodes, playing one of those really annoying, pudgy dudes that kidnaps Geordi. And I saw him in a play in 2000 with Mira Sorvino. Not because I wanted to see him in a play, but because I wanted to see Mira Sorvino. And it was a pretty good play called Naked, although neither one of them was. But I sat really close to Mira, and she was performing, and she was like crying on cue, not just because she was close to me, but I got to meet her and talk to her and say some really dumb, dorky, pretentious thing to her at the time, but it was fun. It was cool. I enjoyed that. And now back to View to a Kill. Which Mira Sorvino never appeared in any Bond movies, although she could have, I guess. That would have been cool. I would have liked that. She would have played somebody with some intelligence, I think, maybe Christmas Jones. Hello. So all right, then, all right, so after this hot tub thing and the Russian thing, she runs off with the tape, but of course Bond switches the tape. Whatever was on this tape, I don't know, it's probably Duran Duran, Arena, or something, but it's some important information about, I guess he was like spying with his Walkman when Zoran was talking about main strikes in 3 days, any delays, I'll hold you accountable. Something like that. He gets that on tape and he plays it over and over again because it just sounds awesome. And he brings it to the superiors and they know, like, all right, what's main strike? What's going on? What's his plan? What's his end game? He has to find this Stacy Tanya Roberts Sutton chick there at the Department of Conservation because you need some information now. And Bond doesn't know everything. And he's in San Francisco now, I think. So, like, yeah, he's a long way from Buckingham Palace, wherever he hangs out most of the time. So he follows her home and he slips into this big house she lives in. And this big house, by the way, this mansion, which is not very furnished inside, by the way, on the first floor, but it's a really big mansion. But if you see on the outside, it looks familiar. That's because it is the mortuary from Phantasm. And another scary movie, even from older times, Burnt Offerings. Yes, this is the Dunsmuir, I think, yeah. The Dung Manure House in California, which I should go check out one day. It's like, my sightseeing geek movie film location places. It's so cool. So Roger Moore sneaks into the house, right? He just lets himself in with his little credit card thing, which is already like, grounds for getting arrested. You're basically breaking and entering here, right? Yeah, but he's James Bond, so he can do it. And eventually I'm sure he's going to work his charms on her. But, if this was the Phantasm house, forget it, man. Roger Moore versus those flying silver mortuary balls, forget about it, man. He'd be minced and all of his blood would be sucked out of him, and he'd be even more embalmed than he looked in the damn movie to begin with. And the tall man would go, Bond. So yeah, those balls chasing Roger Moore around the house would have been a lot better than the rest of the action in this movie. So he goes into the house, he sneaks around, and he walks up to the bathroom where the shower is running. But, Tanya Roberts is not the dumb blonde she appears to be, because once he goes in there, she comes out of a closet with a rifle pointing at him. She threatens him, and then somebody else is trying to break into the house too. It's like, get down, he's got to get the gun, and have a big fight, and the stuntmen are all over the place fighting with these guys, and, they break a vase with Stacy Sutton's dad's ashes or something like that. Granddad's ashes, I don't know, somebody who left to this big company in this big house that she owns. She appears to be quite wealthy. But anyway, after all this fighting and stuff, Bond's not so creepy to her anymore, and he makes her an omelet or a quiche a la Bond or whatever the hell it is, and chumming around and talking about like what's going on and how Zoran is like threatening all the business of this oil company, wants to buy her out and stuff, and he's like such a monster and blah blah blah. So she's a geologist, I guess, right? And after 2 bottles of wine, I'm sure she doesn't look at him as somebody who's old enough to be her father, but he puts her to bed, and he doesn't do nothing. He just puts her to bed and puts the sheets over her very, very luscious body there in her lingerie, and he doesn't do nothing. He just sleeps in the living room, I guess, and wakes up in the morning. There's like an earthquake or something like that. So they go check out some shit on the computer with her, and you hear this little sound, this little Apple computer thing she has next to her bed, and it's this beeping noise. It's like, and you hear this exact same noise in The Spy Who Loved Me when the missiles are being fired. It's like they have like a stock sound library, which is so cool. Such a callback that only a Bond geek would get. It's almost like, the Wilhelm scream, except there is no Wilhelm scream. I don't think, actually, there is no Wilhelm scream. In this movie, I'm shocked. There's like, there's something like it, but it's not, it doesn't have the same pitch. Whatever. I gotta give him credit for not resorting to the old Wilhelm for this movie. Thank you, guys. There's so many other ways to scream, you could just record them all and give them new names. It's time for somebody new. Fuck this Wilhelm guy. He's not that great. All right, so they had the fight thing, and then, they wake up the next morning, everything's peaceful, and they find out that Zoran is trying to flood the fault lines and cause all this shit to happen and flood Silicon Valley. So he'll be the only guy left with microchips. And the CIA guy there, Chuck Lee, is there. He gets strangled in the car on his way out, because people keep leaving their car doors unlocked, and they're so stupid. They go back to City Hall to find out the well layout and understand what's going on. But Zoran is there, and he kills Daniel Benzali. How? There he goes like, she broke in because you fired her. There was a fire, and you perished in the flames. But that means I would have to be dead. Pops him one. Convenient, don't you think? Yes, I'm ever speechless with admiration. You amuse me, Mr. Bond. But not mutual. There's a lot of back and forth between these two, but the dialogue is not that sharp and witty. But Walken says a few cool things, does his faces, and he puts Bond and Stacy there into an elevator and throws some Molotov cocktails into the elevator, sets fire to City Hall. All right, this is another big thing to just cover it all up. This is like the best these villains can do. You can kill Daniel Benzali with a bullet, but you can't shoot James Stock from London Financial Times, right? He doesn't get to just shoot. You have to put him in a fucking elevator. That's so stupid. All right, but this is like just another cool thing, because Bond really can't escape from a bullet in the head, right, if it's already in his head. So he has to escape from a burning elevator shaft with Stacy Sutton. So he does get out through the top, which is really hard to do in most elevators, I think. I don't know how you do that. It always looks so easy. Just flip the top off and just go out through the top. But he climbs out like, James, don't leave me. He goes up there and gets to the door, opens the door, throws down a big hose for her to climb up. No symbolism here. Come on, climb, Stacy, climb. Come on, Sheena, grab that vine. I know you could do it. Come on, you got this. Oh, and all the Bond one-liners that they could have had while he's rescuing Tanya Roberts out of the flames. Oh, did I mention you look really hot? Some really horrible shit he could have been saying, but he didn't say any of those things, because he's a class act, Roger Moore's classy. He doesn't say shit like that. So she climbs up the damn hose. They get out. He gets her down the fire ladder, and all this triumphant music is playing. The cops are there wondering what the hell's going on, and they find the gun that, Zoran was using to frame Bond with, or Stock, or whoever he is. I know these financial guys are always packing, right? So, the cops try to get him. He shoots the hose at him. I'm actually with the British Secret Service. Is he? Are you? Yes, I am James Bond. You must take my word for it. Don't I sound good saying it? The name is Bond. James Bond. No, I know. You're that St. John Smith guy. You're under arrest. Too many names getting thrown around. He can't even keep his own shit straight. He probably has, multiple personality dementia at this point. All these aliases he has to go under. So anyway, they get into the fire engine. Stacy's driving, and Bond goes out on the ladder and stuff. A whole lot of more stunts and stuntmen, but I do believe that there was one stuntman who was just too short to drive the fire engine, so Sir Roger took the helm and drove the fire engine around the streets of San Francisco for some of these action sequences. So good for you, Rod. You still got it, man. So this is like a kind of tedious action sequence, and there's a drawbridge that all the cops go up while it's opening, and of course the car gets stuck on the top of the ramp and slides down the ramp and gets smushed. And there's a lot of really, bumbling cops as comedy relief in this movie. So I'm really sorry the San Francisco PD is represented so poorly in this film. It's probably another reason why it tanked. Oh, I have to say, Zoran didn't just light up City Hall. He set it on fire. Yeah, I have to say that, sorry. So they go to these mines, right? And they dress up in these really nice mining outfits. Of course, Tanya Roberts fits her perfectly, every curve. And, eventually gets ripped off later on, torn off, and she's back into her skirt again. They see Zoran there. And there's all kinds of double cross going on. They get discovered, and there's gunshots. And Zoran pulls out an Uzi and starts blasting away at all of his workers after they set everything up and they set the explosives and shit at the bottom of the mine. He's blowing everybody away with an Uzi, making these hilarious laughing faces and really digging it. Give me a spare clip. Apparently this is the violence that Roger Moore really didn't care much for and really doesn't like this movie. Because it's so violent. When the main villain is just gunning down people indiscriminately, yeah. But at least he's hitting them, for crying out loud. He can never hit Bond, but he could hit everybody else all over the damn mine. It's the thing, they don't use the bullets on the right people. They kill all these innocents. It's stupid. So he's killing off everybody, and then he looks at his watch. Perfect. Right on schedule. So he just decides to throw in a little British pronunciation or something. I don't know. He's supposed to be German, of German descent, or whatever the hell he is. I don't know. He's Walken. Right? We don't even question what he says. He just says it, and it's good. All right, so now they know that Bond is there in the mines with Stacy, and they're chasing him around. All the henchwomen are going after them. And Zoran sets off some explosives and starts flooding the shit. All this water comes through, and Uzi shooting. It's chaos. Grace Jones is climbing up after Tanya Roberts, ripping off her coveralls. I guess she wants a piece of that too. Okay. And then there's a whole lake above. It's all dried out. This guy was fishing in the lake, and then a couple of scenes later, he's like sitting on his boat in a dry, flat plateau there. There's like a couple of fish flapping around. I guess it makes it easier for him. So then Zoran and his close-knit circle, not including Grace Jones, because now she's there with the rest of the henchwomen all getting flooded, he just gets into this blimp box, and it inflates, and this huge Zoran Industries blimp comes floating out of it, and cool music by John Barry. It makes you feel like you're rising up into the air. It's really cool. John Barry's music is so elegant and classy and exciting, and sometimes it gets a little cheesy, but it's great. I love it. It's like the quintessential marriage of Bond and like the score for the films. It's always great when John Barry is involved with it, and he wasn't much longer after a couple more movies. The music in View to a Kill is actually pretty darn good. It's solid. It's better than the film itself. All right, so as Zoran is floating up there in his Zeppelin, this is a little Zeppelin. It's not the biggest one like that had the boardroom in it. This one just has like a cockpit and a couple of passenger seats. It's like the mini blimp. It doesn't use as much air. It blows up much sooner. It's quicker to inflate. I mean, it does blow up later, but not yet. And even fucking Duran Duran in their music video, you see the blimp blow up. Like, don't spoil the freaking movie. You could prance around in all your nice clothes and sing and shit and interact with the Eiffel Tower, but don't give away the movie ending. I don't know, it's stupid. We figure something's gonna blow up at the end of a James Bond movie, but we don't want to know exactly how and when. Sorry, the blimp is going there. It's flying through the air in San Francisco, and Zoran's up there with Mortner and Scarpine, and that's about it, I think. Only minutes more, Carl. He's so excited he's going to blow up Silicon Valley and be in charge of all the microchips. It's going to be so fun. So while they're doing that, Bond and Grace Jones get the big detonator out. And it's like really heavy, but of course, she has to do the cranking of the crane. And he's like, oh, lift. And she's cranking it. Get on! Just to show off how strong she is and whatever. But she doesn't really fight with Bond at all. It's like she just chased him for a while. And then she realizes all her friends are drowned and Zoran fucked her over. I thought that creep loved me. Well, you're right about the creep part. Don't worry, I'm sure there's some dapper British gentlemen around here who can also love it. Yeah, whatever. So now they get this bomb up and they're pushing it on the little push car, but the brake keeps slipping and stopping. And she jumps on it like, I have to hold the brake lever. Push. He pushes the car with Grace Jones standing on it while there's like 5 seconds left for the detonator to go off. He's like, jump! And she's like, get Zoran for me! Well, I was going to do that anyway, but sure, why not? Blows up on the outside after she gives one dirty look up at Zoran, who could probably see it from the sky, and it's like boom, blows up, and nothing happens. Just the one little bomb and Grace Jones are blown to smithereens, and there's nothing, no flood, no Silicon Valley disaster. It's all just like peaceful and calm, just like it was before all the Uzi massacre, of course. And Zoran's up there looking like, and he's like all upset, and he sees Tanya Roberts running around outside looking for Bond. And he sees her on the hilltop. It's so pretty, so idyllic. Like they're just about to have the picnic with the bottle of Bollinger, but then the blimp starts coming in, starts closing in on her. Stacy, look out! The filming is so bad. Like it's like a mile away from her in one shot. Stacy, get down! And then the next shot, it's like right behind her. And Zoran snatches her up into the sky. And Bond has the time to grab onto the mooring rope and hang on while they're ascending. So he's weighing it down a little bit, but they go really high up. And now they're flying over San Francisco, and they try to find the sharpest buildings they can to drag his balls over. And they people are looking up. The same cop that had the disaster with the cars getting wrecked earlier is there, and he gets rear-ended by some stupid spectator. So everybody's watching the blimp go by with this little dumbass hanging off the front of it. So they go right to the Golden Gate Bridge, where the finale of this movie will take place. And it's a pretty good one, I think. I like it. So they go to the damn bridge, and they decide that they want to bang Bond into the bridge. They want to swing him into the bridge and just let him splatter against the side of it. So they do, but their aim is not quite so true. And he swings around, and he starts tying the damn blimp to the bridge, and they can't get off. It's stuck now. It's and of course Walken gets into it. More power, more cowbell. Nothing happens. They still can't get away. Full throttle! And it's still stuck there, so he gets pissed off, and now Tanya Roberts decides to take some action here, and she conks somebody in the head with a fire extinguisher, and they start tussling and shit. And then the blimp crashes into the side of the bridge and smashes its window, and everyone gets knocked out. Tanya Roberts gets up and she starts slipping out of the blimp, and then Walken wakes up and follows her out, and the music starts. It's really exciting and rousing, and it's so cool. And she jumps out into the bridge, and Bond tries to catch her, and they roll down that tube thing that makes up the bridge, the red suspension thing. I don't know how big it is or if you could actually stand on it, but it's slippery. It's like you're standing on this really long, curved pipe thing, I guess. That's the top of a freaking bridge. But it's an exciting location for a fight, which is what they have. Walken comes out carrying an axe. He jumps down. He does a little spin. I'm not sure if that was his dance move that he tries to squeeze in there, but it looks cool. He jumps down, spins around with the axe, comes after Bond and Stacy, and she climbs down and ting, swings the axe. They start having a little fight. It's not really that well choreographed. There's a lot of close-ups and a few moves and a few more of those punches, but nobody gets an axe embedded in them. That's the sad part. All right, so they fight a little bit, and the music is great, and there's these really twee little flittering. The flutes are getting really high, like supposed to make you really chew your nails down. It's so tense. Oh, what's gonna happen? And there's like one really far away shot where you see two people struggling on the bridge, and I don't know if it's really happening, but nobody was really up on that bridge during the filming of this movie. It's all just shot on a little sound stage, and it probably wasn't that much sound, except Tanya Roberts screaming. But then finally, Moore gets the advantage there, and he's hanging onto the top of the axe on a rope, and Walken starts slipping down, and the crazy German doctor puts his monocle in his eye. And Walken's laughing. And he slips off. Like, it's really funny. I'm gonna die. Falls off the bridge. Maybe he survives. I don't know. There's just like a rubber dummy falling into the water. Just like the first guy he dropped out of the blimp. It's probably the same dummy, just wearing Zoran's clothing. So they dropped that dummy into the water. Apparently that's it. Max Zorin has perished. But Tanya Roberts is still alert. James! And she sees that fucking crazy German doctor gritting his teeth from the blimp. Oh, and he's like shooting, and he runs out of bullets too. And then he goes and looks for the dynamite that they have in the closet. Pulls out a bundle of dynamite. Now, it's never a good idea for the bad guys to pick up dynamite, especially when they're the henchmen. So him and Scarpine are like fighting with a dynamite after they light it. Fucking blimp blows up. I mean, they could have thrown it, but they were trying to, no, let me, I want to do it. No, let me get him. Blow it up. Couple of idiots. So I'm sure Scarpine had a lot more scars after that, and I'm sure Mortimer's monocle got melted into sand, and they died too. The whole blimp sags and falls into the water, very symbolic, after this Bond franchise has become what it has. Alright, so they climb, I don't know how they get down from the bridge. There's never a cab when you want one. That's a good one. Alright, now get the fuck down. So somehow they get back down from the bridge. I don't know how, but they do, and they end up back at her mansion, and all their clothing is on the floor, and Q's little friggin' robot dog is looking for Bond and looking for her. And after all these years, Q, that's like the best gadget you could come up with for this last Roger Moore remote controlled dog. Good God. All right. So the camera goes up and it sees they're in the shower, and that is not soap. And he throws the towel over the dog, and thank goodness that's it. Roger Moore throws in the towel on his James Bond tenure. And back to the Duran Duran song and the Golden Gate Bridge, where you see all the cars just going by like nothing happened this afternoon. No, there was no giant blimp exploding next to the bridge and people falling and fighting on the top of it. Nah, none of that. There should be a traffic jam. There should be cop cars all over the place. The bridge should be just shut down for an investigation and fishing all that damn vinyl and whatever shit out of the ocean. Probably killing all the fish and whatever rest of the crabs are still in there. So this is the end of A View to a Kill. It's kind of sad that it's no more Roger Moore. And at the very end of the movie, it says James Bond will return, but there's no title of the next movie, which of course would be The Living Daylights with Timothy Dalton. And Dalton was actually ready to step into this movie if Roger Moore didn't do View to a Kill. It might have been a little bit better with him, or maybe not, but I mean, he would have been younger. That's the only advantage, I guess, because I mean, Roger Moore is still probably a better loved Bond than Dalton, even though Dalton only had 2 movies. They were pretty good, at least, well, the first one anyways. Living Daylights was good. But at the end of View to a Kill, if you watch the movie and you listen to Sir Roger Moore's commentary on it, which is very good, he'll tell you as he's watching James Bond will return, and it won't be Roger Moore, it should be Timothy Dalton. Yes, it will. Okay, but good for you, Bond. So anyway, the final count of how many women Bond sleeps with in this movie is 4. All right? 4 chicks in one movie. Now, in all his movies, I don't think he's ever Rogered Moore. But just to tie him, Sean Connery slept with 4 chicks in Never Say Never Again. But that was a few years earlier. That was 83. Okay, Well, the whole story with the Never Say Never Again is it's a Bond movie made outside of the regular studio because there were some issues and people were disagreeing and fighting and whatever the hell they were doing. So when Octopussy came out in 1983, so did Never Say Never Again, but not from MGM Studios. It was like an independent studio. The theme song was pretty crappy. It was basically a remake of Thunderball, but it was still Sean Connery. It was a good movie. It was a lot of fun, good action. Connery was only 52 when he did his last appearance as Bond, as opposed to Roger Moore's 57. But hey, I'd want to milk as long as I could, man. If I was Bond, I would still want to be Bond. Q could just build me some funky wheelchair or some rocket canes I could fly around on and, bulletproof Depends. I could still do it, man. If I was him, I would just not quit because there's nothing else to do after that. I mean, it was Spice World, Jean-Claude Van Damme. Nah. But he wrote his memoirs and his Bond book and stuff, and he's one of the greats, man. I love Roger Moore. And this is a good movie. There's definitely some trivia and things. Before we go, we'll tell you some things about this movie that are cool that I didn't already tell you. All right, Roger Moore didn't like the violence, and funny enough, even Christopher Walken apparently isn't a big fan of guns, although he sure does use a lot of them. He sure does shoot a lot of people in his movies. And it's good. Yeah, he's good doing that. If somebody's going to kill you, it should be Walken, right? Interesting things, the original plot of View to a Kill, of how to destroy Silicon Valley, involved changing the course of Halley's Comet. All right, now, they would have to retitle this movie A View to a Shark Jumping the Kill, or something like that. It's beyond cheesy at this point. And then there were some really off-the-wall, crazy bullshit Bond plots that came along in the Pierce Brosnan era that would even challenge that, I guess. But this movie was not really well received. Of course, it got trashed by Siskel and Ebert. They didn't like it at all. It was like on their worsts of the year list. The next movie would be The Living Daylights with Timothy Dalton and another song that's kind of Duran-y too, the Aha song. But we're not talking about that now, okay? I think we've had enough. Missing Real will return. But who will do it? If I stop, who could possibly take over for Missing Real?
Bond. Simon Le Bond.
I don't think so. You got your license to sing, that's good enough. All right, gang, I hope you liked that rush. Thanks so much again for listening. I hope this podcast left you shaken and stirred. Au revoir.